Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today to speak with us. My name is Peter Palumbo. I'm the Director of Academic Advising at Providence College, and I also oversee the Undeclared program. In a moment, I'm going to have my colleagues introduce themselves before we start talking about our topic, which is what's next, academic success and student engagement, first year and beyond. We know this is not the traditional way that we would like to share this information, but we thank you for taking some time out of your day and listening to us as we share some insight and feedback on how we can best support students during their transition in the first year at Providence College and beyond. So without further ado, I'd like Dr. Wanda Ingram to please introduce her.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wanda Ingram, and I'm a member of the class of 1975. So I have a very long connection with the institution, and I came back here about 30 years ago to work in the dean's office, and I am currently the Senior Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies. And my primary task is to help students who are coming in as freshmen to become sophomores. As a member of the first women's class, I started in chemistry and ended up in psychology, so I am definitely a person that you can talk with about enjoying taking the various courses that are required at PC and finding your niche. It's a wonderful process. I'm also an adjunct professor in the graduate school, and I teach college student development theory in the higher ed program. And I enjoy working with freshman students and helping them transition from one prospect to another and graduating in 4 years. They're very good at that. At this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to Janet to introduce herself.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Janet Ray. I am currently the Assistant Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and in my role here today, I am also the Director of International Student Success. I also work with helping international students transition from high school into coming to the U.S. and understand and acclimating themselves to U.S. culture. Currently, I'm also the sophomore dean, so I work with students. Dr. Ingram hands students over to me, and I help them to get through their second year of being at Providence College, as well as help them move on to their junior year, and then ultimately, being successful in graduating within their 4-year time. I'm currently also filling in for the Assistant Dean Director of Multicultural Student Success. So I'm also currently working with students in the Multicultural Student Success program, helping those students to transition to college, helping them to make it through their 4 years here, helping them to acclimate being away from home and ensuring that they're successful as well. And I also, like Dr. Ingram, I'm also an adjunct professor in the graduate school, and I teach org theory and leadership in higher education. So thank you all for being here today.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Ray, Dr. Ingram. As you can tell, my esteemed colleagues wear many hats at the institution. So you have a good team of folks to help you share some information about how to make your adjustment into college life and Providence College as smooth as possible. So for our first question, this one's for you, Dr. Ingram. In your role, how do you help support students as they transition into PC?
When college begins, students begin to realize there are big differences between high school and college. 1 year of high school work often equals a semester in college with fewer opportunities for assessment. So it's not unusual for a student perhaps to have maybe 2 exams and a final, and that is going to be their grade. Now, we know memorizing is important, but not like it was in high school. A lot of students are accustomed to doing retakes on exams. That does not necessarily happen at the college level. And in some cases, there's no such thing as extra credit. The specific amount of time to complete an exam and a quiz is very normal at the college level. And I'm always fascinated by the number of students who do not really know which types of exams they do best in. When I say that, I'm talking about the various study techniques that are required. Some of us do better on true and false, some multiple choice. Some of us do better on essays, some on fill-ins. We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses, but there are strategies for each one of those. And then dealing with test anxiety is usually another one where students think, well, now that I'm in college, I won't need any help with that. But it takes time to understand the process for how our anxiety presents itself. And most times students will need some help with that. College courses require critical thinking and also good reading comprehension. So these are two other areas that I spend a lot of time working with students on in reference to the developmental aspect. Dealing with new freedoms can also be problematic, and it really shows its ugly head when we're talking about things like time management. No one tells a student now when they should sleep, when they should eat, when they should study, or to even attend classes. And procrastinators, beware. Using to-do lists and planners are very helpful. Everyday living skills, as simple as doing laundry and managing money, are also things that can complicate a first-year student's life. So it's time to ask students, what kinds of habits do they have right now that maybe need to be worked on and changed? So there's a lot of conversations that occur in my office and then also with family too. The following all serve to help students develop realistic expectations when dealing with first-year adjustments. An issue of maturity level, coping abilities, problem-solving skills, awareness of their strengths and weaknesses, and also being an active learner, knowing how you learn. Because in different classes, you're going to be using different processes. So there's like 5 quick things I can say in reference to academic adjustment for first-year students. Become familiar with college resources. Start off with orientation. You also work through those processes with advisement and other programs. Get to know the catalog, get to know your handbook. Number 2, become acquainted with academic leaders, not just faculty, but department chairs, academic advisors, deans, etc. Learn how to adjust class schedule after the semester has begun, number 3, and Director Palumbo will be talking more about that. Number 4, understand general and major requirements. You have many resources, department chairs, the guidebook, Director Palumbo, and others. And number 5, understand policies and academic options. We have minors, we have majors, we have leave of absences. Students can withdraw from classes. Students are in honors. Students want to change majors, etc. And many of these conversations occur in the dean's office as well. So that's just a snippet of some of the processes that occur during that first year. And I'm never bored. There's always something going on with regards to students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ingram. Dr. Ray, in your role, how would you help support students as they transition into Providence College?
I'm sorry, Peter, could you repeat that?
Sure, of course. So in your role, and I know, again, you're wearing many hats, but how do you support students as they transition into Providence College?
Sure. So I will talk about the international students, and then I'll talk a little bit about the multicultural students that we have on campus. So typically when we have first-year international students, they require a little bit more information than our domestic students. And that information starts from the first day that they decide that they're coming to Providence College. And what that means is that we reach out to the students, we provide immigration documents so that international students are able to come into the country and be able to come to Providence College and get an education. So what does it look like when we're supporting our international students? So typically international students will reach out to us. They will have questions regarding, what does my room look like, or simple things that domestic students may not think about. International students are thinking about that. A lot of them are worried about what will my classes look like? Will the professors be able to understand what I'm saying? Will I be able to understand the academic rigor at Providence College, which is different from what I do at my previous institution? So what we do is we have an orientation for international students, and it's a requirement for all international students to attend orientation, whether you are coming to Providence College as an athlete or whether you're coming as a regular student. And one of the things that we do to really support the international students on campus is that we carefully plan orientation in such a way that it gets them in front of the people that they need to know and things that they need to be aware of. So we will have someone from the Office of Academic Support Service come in and talk to the students about plagiarism, talk about, citing work within the classroom, because what we found is that a lot of our international students, for them, what we consider plagiarism is not considered plagiarism in their home countries. So we have to ensure that they understand the difference between the work that they've done in their home country versus the classroom work that is expected in a US institution. And the other piece is that we also do is that we let them, we bring in a faculty member to talk about the American classroom and what does that look like? How do you address your professor? You know, how do you make friends in the classroom? How do you attend professor office hours? You know, if you have an issue with something that's going on in the classroom, if you're not understanding the American way of teaching, who do you reach out to in terms of that? We also get them familiar with other resources on campus. We have a conversation with public safety so that they understand that public safety is not a department that they should be scared of, that it's a department that is there to help them if they have any issues on campus. So we try to get them really involved in different areas on campus so that they know who to go to and who the resources are that they need. We also talk about, you know, living with your roommate and what that looks like and getting to know your roommate, because we understand that, you know, enrolling as a freshman is a stressful time for any student, and living with someone who doesn't share the same cultural background can also add to the apprehension that international students may have. So we ask them to, you know, reach out to their roommates. You know, we understand that they'll be nervous as they start their new adventure. So we request that they try to establish a connection early on and reach out to their roommates in advance of arriving on campus. And, you know, who can answer any questions that they may have and who they can have a connection with. We also have coaches, international coaches, who reach out to our international students before they arrive on campus and then even when they're on campus. And during the semester, that the first semester that they're here, they also will stay connected with the students in order to help them acclimate to Providence College. Of course, we always recommend that they visit the International Student Services Office so that we can answer any questions they have regarding their immigration status. One thing that's really important that we stress to the students, and sometimes they don't always understand, is culture shock. And we try to stress to them that culture shock may not happen within the first few weeks. It could happen midway through the semester, and it's something that all international students will face because, you know, they're coming from a completely different country and trying to get into a different culture here within the US and within the PC campus as well. So we try to make them aware of the stages of culture shock and what that means for them and who to reach out to if they are experiencing culture shock. We found that a lot of students have found it very helpful to go to campus ministry, to speak with someone at campus ministry, or to reach out to a fellow international student who may be going through the same experiences. Now I'm going to shift over to the multicultural students. And in terms of helping the multicultural students, it's very similar to what Dr. Ingram was talking about, you know, the ways that getting them acclimated to the classroom, reaching out to resources on campus, because what they find is that, you know, the places that they've come from, they're a larger number, they're a larger population, but then when they come on campus, they're such a smaller group, and they really have to stand out while they're in their classroom. So what does that mean? That means speaking up. That means, you know, utilizing the resources that are provided during the Multicultural Student Success Transitions Program. That means that we also do something very similar to what we do for the international orientation. We put them in front of different groups of people, different faculty, different staff that can help them acclimate to the institution, whether it's speaking with professors, whether it's helping them write an essay, and then having professors give feedback on essays so that they understand what the writing is in the classroom. It's also, you know, reaching out and thinking about leadership, having them step up and say, you know, I was a leader back in high school, so what organizations can I join in order to continue with my leadership abilities, or what organization can I join and get to know other people through by doing leadership. So we try to make them very aware of all the different resources on campus that they can go to, that they can get involved in, and truly connect as a community.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Ray. In my area, just regarding undeclared students and just academic advising overall, one thing that I recommend to students is just try to begin to understand what an academic advisor is. One of the common misconceptions that first-year students have is that an academic advisor is like a guidance counselor. where they're going to be reaching out to students multiple times throughout the year. They're going to call them to their office. They're going to be the one leading that conversation. And while advisors do reach out to students, students need to be proactive and reach out to their academic advisor. When they have a question, they should send an email. They should make sure that they're addressing their concerns early and often. Advisors love working with students. They like being part of that developmental conversation and helping a student starting out in their first semester and seeing them grow and flourish throughout their time at Providence College. But I always remind students, because often they wind up trying to sweep it under the rug of, that was a question I had, but I'll worry about it later on. And then another thing comes up and they say, well, it's something that I am curious about, but I don't want to bother someone, so I'll worry about it later. And it gets to a point where that stuff they're sweeping under the rug is a huge mound that they're going to trip over later on. So I always encourage students to be strong self-advocates. Connect with their academic advisor, have a list of questions going into their conversations. All students have to meet with their advisor at least once a semester to discuss spring registration. However, once a semester is not enough. If a student wants to learn more about their academic advisor, I encourage them to go on the MyPC portal, and there is in the quick links an academic profile box that a student can find all of their contact information for their academic advisor and every professor they have. And please note, for many students, so undeclared students, the vast majority of undeclared students are taking a 1-credit first-year experience course that's taught by their advisor. So you're going to be seeing your advisor once a week for the duration of the semester. And undeclared students are actually the largest class coming in. We have 250 undeclared students this semester. Additionally, when you look at the business school, they have a first-year advising program where students are required to go to those sessions. They happen about every other week in the evening, and they talk about many of the common questions that first-year students have. How do I plan to study abroad? What do I do if I maybe want to pursue a double major or a minor? When should I begin talking about internships? So these are all questions that many students tend to have early on in their college search process, and advisors know that, and they plan in advance to have that information in place. Another piece too is I really want to put the onus on the student to ask these questions. I know I said that I want you to be proactive, but I want you to be involved in developing that relationship with your advisor. Some students, though, are concerned or afraid, to be quite honest with you, to reach out to Dr. So-and-so, Professor so-and-so, Father so-and-so, that they're afraid of the title and that difference in terms of power structure. Many times I'll actually role play with a student and say, I'm your advisor, what would you say? And they're a little confused by it, but it helps them work out the kinks as far as the questions they're going to ask. But 9 times out of 10, when they begin to actually reach out to their advisor, they realize that this person is eager to help them. They are working in higher education because they love college students. They're here for a reason. So once students begin to meet with their advisors, and this goes for professors as well, they see that they truly care and want to be part of their academic journey. So I would recommend that you start to think about how you can make the most of your advising relationship and start to write down a list of questions. I like to think of it as your bucket list. Whenever I'm in a large session, Dr. Ingram's smiling because she's seen me do this a few times, but when I'm in a large session with parents and students, I ask everyone, as you were starting the college process, how many of you maybe wanted to double major? And I have students raising their hands and yelling out majors. And then I ask students, how many maybe want a minor? How many want to get an internship? How many want to be a tutor? How many want to develop their writing skills? How many want to maybe study abroad at multiple locales? And these are all great things, and everyone gets very animated. And then I remind them, I know none of this information. I don't know that you want to double major, you want to study abroad in Vienna, that you love writing and we kind of want to become a writing tutor, or maybe that previously you've struggled with quantitative reasoning courses, so you've utilized tutoring. I don't know that information. Students need to be proactive and share that with their advisor because they will help you connect the dots, but they need dots to work with. So I encourage all first-year students, second-year students, really students throughout their 4 years at Providence College, begin to think of what is their bucket list? What do they want to accomplish before they leave PC? And then start to share those questions with their advisor to begin this conversation and really take ownership of their academic experience. So moving on to our next question, I'm going to start with you, Dr. Ray. What are some common mistakes or problems that students run into during their transition into Providence College, and how would you help support them?
Thank you, Peter. So I would have to say, so there's quite a few things that I do see as common mistakes that students usually tend to run into. And when I talk about this, we're talking about this broadly in terms of both international students, multicultural students, and then also our sophomores that are transitioning from their first year. So the first one I would say is that they either let their grades define their worth. So they come in and they come from high school and they have these really great grades, you know, they have all A's, and then all of a sudden they get in the classroom and they realize that they're struggling, and they don't and they think about their grades. That's all they're thinking. My grades are suffering. I'm no longer an A+ student. So they panic and they either tend to give up or they tend to find help for the grades. The other part of that is that students who don't let their grades define them, in the sense that they think that they're just going to sail through their first year or the second year of college because they've always gotten grades, and they think that it's going to be very similar to high school, where they have second chance to submit a paper or a second chance to retake a grade. So that's one of the common mistakes or the problems that I see students having as they transition. The other one is taking initiative. So, you know, it's one thing to accept that grades aren't important, you know, as other people may make them out to be, but it's another thing to not take initiative to capitalize on the resources that we have at Providence College in order to help students improve their grades. So sometimes what we'll see is that students will say, well, I don't know who to go to in order to get help you know, I'm failing a class, I'm not doing well, I don't understand what my professor is saying, but I don't know where to turn, I don't know what resources are available. So students will find that they will not seek those resources. They'll either wait until we send them an email telling them that they are failing their course or they're in jeopardy of failing their courses, and then they may reach out. Or some students may wait until the end of the semester when they've failed their courses, and then they say, you know, I don't know who I should have reached out to in order to get help. The other piece too of it is change behavior. You know, some students don't realize that they're now in a college setting and that they need to change the way that they act, in the way that they respond. They don't understand that their education is their responsibility because they've had college counselors who sat down with them or who reached out to them and said, hey, you know, you're not doing X, Y, Z, you know. So it's really important for the students to understand that in order to be successful, they either need to change the behavior that they came in with, or they need to change the company that they are hanging out with in order to be successful. The final piece that I'll talk about, and we do see this a lot, and it talks about extracurricular activities as well as sports that students may be doing. You know, and sometimes it may be that students are so focused on extracurricular activities or so focused on the sports that they're doing that they completely forget about their grades. And sometimes they may need to take a step back and reevaluate what's really important to them, and maybe think about, you know, how am I going to make sure that I'm successful in getting the grades that I need in order to move on to my next year, you know, whether it's sophomore, whether it's junior, whether it's senior year, and you know, what extracurricular activities I may need to cut back on in order to ensure that I'm successful. And the good thing about our office, the Office of Undergrad and Grad Studies, is that we are a resource for students, and we will reach out to students. We check in with students throughout the semester. We let them know when they're in jeopardy of failing a class. We reach out when we receive emails from professors telling us that students are not attending classes or that they haven't submitted work. You know, we take that initiative to reach out to students, check in with them to see what they're doing, how we can best assist those students, and to really ensure that they're successful so that they can transition from whatever the year they're in to their next year.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Ingram, what common mistakes do you see with first-year students?
Well, we have to also talk a little bit about the role of parents. So some of what I'm going to say is redundant with some of what Dr. Ray said, but I think it bears repeating, because as much as parents want to take care of things, it's very important for our students to start assuming responsibility for their own educational program. And it's more difficult right now because the students are in an environment that is just so different than in the past, in reference to high school, but also because of the pandemic, students are going through some hoops that they normally would not have to. So learning how to associate with their professor in and out of the classroom can be painstaking for some students, especially when we're talking about virtual in some cases. So seeking out support is sometimes going to be held up a little bit more, and students do not understand the definition of what advising hours are all about. And this is what both Director Palumbo as well as Dean Ray has said, is that they have to utilize those resources. Tutoring and help with writing papers. Students, even in the past, could put together a paper and send it to the writing center. You don't even have to leave your room. And now, in some cases, students are not allowed to, but even when you could, when you've got like 6 inches to a foot of snow on the ground, you don't want to leave your room. You can go ahead and send that paper in. So these are wonderful resources that the students do not necessarily take advantage of until it's almost a critical time. The OAS, which we mentioned constantly, Office of Academic Services, is not only there for students who need accommodations because of a disability and because perhaps they had an IEP when they were in high school, but it is for everyone in reference to tutoring, etc. Getting help with physical and mental health issues is another big one, and getting parents to get the student to utilize those services. Many times a student wants to start fresh, wants to start a whole clean slate, as I hear quite often, and they don't want to make connections with people who are in the field of mental health, counseling center, etc., because they want to kind of leave that behind, not really realizing that you bring your luggage, your baggage, your situations with you. So a lot of times it takes some coaxing from parents, but parents have to realize you can't go to the point of making those phone calls for them or whatever, but getting them to make those first steps. Getting help with symptoms of homesickness is another one. And many students go through symptoms of homesickness. A lot of times, like Janet was saying in reference to what happens with the international students, it does not necessarily show up right away, but there are little mini signs. And sometimes the students kind of just miss it a little bit and say, well, you know, it's not that important, I'll be fine, it'll go away. A lot of times they need to do something about it. So you have people like us in the dean's office who try to help with making those kinds of referrals. If things do go wrong, and oftentimes they do, and the parents usually the first ones to get called. I won't talk about the time of day. Many of the calls happen, and next thing you know, they're Pepto-Bismol and taking aspirin and whatever because they haven't slept the rest of the night. It is tempting for a parent to pick up the phone and call as soon as our offices are open and call on behalf of their son or daughter. But it's important for the student to do this themselves and for the parents to be knowledgeable as to what the resources are, but then to help them by helping them make referrals. Some students may receive that first low grade. I get a lot of that with first-year students. And I hear, Dean, it's never happened before. I just need to drop the course. It's just too difficult, or there's something wrong. I heard in reference to the professor that he's not a good professor or she's not a good professor, so I really just need to come out of this class. And a lot of times students are looking for these instant gratifications, instant resolution. And some will just completely stop attending a class, as Dean Ray was saying before. Some are ready to change their majors because they just say it's just not working. And all on perhaps a quiz or a paper that was just turned in and they got back and it was a grade that they did not expect. All of our students are very good when it came to their grades, etc. That's how they got into PC. But the expectation is that that's going to continue, and they can't without a lot of help and changes in growing up. Students can't panic at the first sign of trouble or call home for parent intervention. They need to develop a list of possible solutions. They need to look at their personal process. What do I normally do when something goes wrong? They need to learn what makes up that list of coping. What kind of risk takers are they? What kind of problem solving do they do, etc. And it's difficult, we know that, to ask for help from strangers. We're the strangers. We're the people that they don't know. They've been known for quite some time, probably in their high school, and by their guidance counselors and others. We're not counselors. We're not the guidance counselors. So they need to find people that they can start to make some new connections with. The professors, the deans, academic advisors, etc. And that takes time, and we ask parents to help with coping with that because it takes a while for people to get to know each other. And when it comes to mid-semester time, we do what's called send-fors. And if a student is having any difficulties whatsoever, they will hear from us. As the freshman class dean, any student who receives a grade below a C will hear from me, regardless. And some students get upset with me about that because they say it was one C minus and all my other grades were all A's. I don't know why you're sending something to me. I would rather err on the side of caution. Because if a student does not have a game plan for how they're going to get their grades up, it's important for them to know what the resources are and to be pointed in the right direction. So we give the students an opportunity to take the lead and to come up with an academic plan and to get back to their parents after having maybe woken them up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting things under control and realizing that it takes some time. So it's an interesting process that we go through. We know that the parents are ready and able to be able to take charge and take control, but this is a growing process. So we encourage parents to get their sons and daughters to do X, Y, and Z, to start getting control of their situation themselves. And that takes time.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Ingram. In my area regarding undeclared students and just academic advising overall, one thing that I run into, and Dr. Ingram and Dr. Ray both mentioned this, is procrastination, where some students will wait, even though that they know resources would be helpful. Maybe they say, I'll deal with that later. I like to encourage students to think of future them. I do this often. I say, what can I do today that's going to help out future Peter a week from now? One of those recommendations that I have for students is I would utilize career education early and often. Many students make the mistake of not going to career education until maybe they're working on their resume, cover letter, or looking for an internship in their junior or senior year. I, however, think that career education is an outstanding resource for students as they're trying to make academic decisions. I have many students, I know both Dr. Ingram and I laugh about this, we have students coming into our offices saying, I love history or English or psychology, but I don't know, I don't want to be a historian or an English teacher, so I don't want to do that. If we had $1 for every time we had a student come in, we'd have many dollars. And I love that conversation. I tell a student to get comfortable because I tell them that a Providence College education is more than your major. You're getting all the skills from our core curriculum in terms of analytical thinking, problem solving skills, quantitative reasoning skills, writing skills, oral communication, all things that will help you for many professions, not just one directly correlated with your major. So I tell students, go to career education. There's a lot of really fun assessments that they have. They have a great tool called What Can I Do with This Major that helps to break down that concrete thinking of I have to major in X to work in Y. And while yes, there are some exceptions. If you want to be an accountant, that it is important to have an accountancy major to prepare for the CPA. But I have many students that want to go into pre-med. I had a student recently that majored in French and went on to medical school because she was fulfilling all the requirements she needed for medical school while getting a degree in something she was passionate about and increased her overall GPA, which is also very important for medical school. So career education also keeps tabs on all of our alum, and students can have short conversations with them, informational interviews, just to pick their brain about, tell me about your field. I want to learn more about how you're applying your history degree in this marketing job you have. And just making connections to break down that idea of there's only one career path moving forward. I remind undeclared students that when I was in college, the Department of Homeland Security did not exist. And currently it's one of the nation's largest employers. So it's not like in the late 90s, early 2000s, you could major in something to go towards the Department of Homeland Security. But what they were looking for is individuals that had all those skills I mentioned that students will receive from the Providence College core curriculum and every major we offer, every minor combination. So in addition to seeking out career education, I would encourage students to think about what's fun. What do they enjoy? What are they passionate about? And I know many times when I say this to large groups, I see one or two parents with their hand ready to be raised to say, well, this is an expensive experience. So I want to make sure that a student is making sure that when they leave, they have viable career paths moving forward. I challenge that idea with, if a student is passionate and enjoys what they're doing, their GPA is going to be higher and it's going to open more doors for them. So they can go and have competitive internship programs. They can study abroad in different locations. They can fold in double majors and minors a lot easier than if they're forcing themselves in one area and maybe struggling academically. So many of these questions can be addressed by talking to career education, because it does help students lay out their options of, this is what PC graduates are doing now with their PC degrees. I love when I make that recommendation to students. I say, after you meet with career education, report back to me, because I want to hear what they say. And they come back, and some of that stress they had associated with their major and their career path starts to melt away, because they have more information to make an informed decision. So if you haven't yet done so, I would encourage you to go to the career education website. They have a whole host of virtual services, and it will really complement the academic advising conversation and give you a little direction as you start to think about how your major relates to your profession and those things that you're passionate about academically. So the theme in all of our answers is a lot of being proactive and seeking out resources, but it really is one of the true indicators of success for Providence College students, of making sure when you have a question, you ask, and you will find 4 or 5 people that will bend over backwards to help support you. You just have to make sure that you are vocal about your concerns. So moving on to the next question, the elephant in the room is, obviously we're currently in a world pandemic. So Providence College has been taking great steps to try to address many of the concerns that students have as we navigate these uncharted waters. But I'm going to start with you, Dr. Ingram, first. Could you talk about in your area, how did Providence College adapt and start to employ different techniques to address students as they're tackling with virtual learning and having a different college experience than they've had in the past?
Actually, I think I have the shortest of answers, because I am talking about more the past than the present, because last semester, how we address these issues is quite different from the dynamics for this current semester. And what I mean by that is, because this was the exception, except for maybe transfer students, our students had already been on campus, had the ability to make connections, knew where a lot of the resources were, had made close friends with regards to roommates and others in student activities and clubs, had already established various kinds of routines, etc., and perhaps been to mass and talked with chaplains and talked with personal counseling, etc. So when we ended up having to shut down because of the pandemic, realizing that this was something serious and had to go completely remote, I think the ones who were the most stressed at that time probably were our IT people, because they had to come up with magic in reference to ways for students to be able to attend classes, etc., via computers. And we were lacking equipment and things of that nature as well. And we had professors, including yours truly, who were not accustomed to doing that kind of process of Zoom, et cetera, but ready to learn. And we really upped the learning curve very quickly. But our students adjusted very well, all things considered, because like I said, they had the comforts of knowing what was available to them here on the campus. Our current first-year students who are coming in now, it's a different kind of process. So we are still kind of making this up as we go in reference to trying to find ways to help them make connections. And we can't forget, these students are still grieving over the fact that they missed out on their last semester of high school and graduations and all the things that would make a culmination of 12 years of school so significant to them, and now deciding to attend college and that being different as well. So the new normal is still a process in reference to what is normal for these students, and they're still grieving as a result of it. So our ability to make personal connections on the campus now, because we still are doing some of the very same things with virtual and adapting to college life, is taking longer. And COVID is going to be here for a while, and having students try to figure out new processes, new ways of making connections and feeling connected with not only people within their residence halls, but elsewhere on campus, is taking a little bit more creativity. So I ask students to please let people know, as their RAs and their hall directors and student activities, etc., if they get ideas, or if they have other friends who are at other campuses who are experiencing certain kinds of processes or activities and et cetera, to let us all know that, so that we can try to add on to the list of things to help students make good connections and to be able to get more accustomed to PC sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Dr. Ray, would you like to share anything in your field?
Absolutely. So first of all, I do want to say that I am proud of the work that Providence College has done, just preparing over the summer to get our students to be ready to start the new semester. And as someone who has a freshman at Providence College, you know, and seeing the smooth transition that she has had from her high school into Providence College, and the way how Providence College has handled, you know, just getting students on campus, just working with students who are remote learners, connecting with different departments on campus, partnering with faculty and staff to ensure that our students' needs are addressed, you know, and what does that look like in terms of, you know, if a student is having a difficult time and not able to access technology, you know, and a professor reaches out to us, we reach out to the student, and then we also reach out to the IT department and figure out how can we best help the student to ensure that the student is able to access work online. We know that, you know, that these are tough times where students may not, you know, they may be in a household where there are 3 other siblings who need to log on at the same time, or they may be in a dorm room with 2 other roommates that also have classes at that time. So how has Providence College, you know, sorted out that situation? And that is, you know, creating space for private, creating a community space for students to be able to go and take classes outside, well, have their classes outside of their room so that they're not interrupting their roommates and vice versa, you know, or students who are at home and may have issues accessing technology, you know, having a conversation with the IT department, looking at free ways in which that they can get Wi-Fi. You know, if a student is not attending classes, you know, whereas we could go find that student and know that that student is on campus somewhere and have Residence Life reach out to that student. What are we doing? We're picking up the phone, we're calling those students, you know, we're saying, you know, we're worried about you, what's going on, how can we help you? You know, why are you not attending classes? And then we're also doing virtual appointments for students, and how are we making those virtual appointments engaging? Because those students are not, you know, they're not face to face with us. So how are we getting the information across to those students while still being engaging? You know, that's just asking a common question. How are you doing? How is your semester going? How are you feeling? How are your parents? You know, just breaking the ice on that conversation and letting the students know that we really care about them and that we have invested a lot of time over the summer to ensure that they feel safe and they feel that they have the resources they need in order to be successful in these times. So again, I'm very proud of the work that Providence College has done. You know, from the first time that we heard about this pandemic in the spring semester versus where we are now, there's a lot of work that has been done by staff, faculty, administrators, custodians, just anyone that you can think of. So I'm happy the way that things have been.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Ray. I'd like to echo Dr. Ray's comments that when this all started in early March, the college was really quick to mobilize and put together 150 faculty, staff, administrators on different continuity task force to address all the possible needs that we might have moving forward through this current situation. I know many folks that haven't taken a vacation day since March, that people are working long hours. My 2 colleagues here, I will get an email from them at 10 o'clock at night and saying, what are you doing online? And then I'll respond to them. We're all working tirelessly to help support our students and try to honor the spirit of what students would experience on campus in a traditional semester. One of those areas, though, that I'd like to highlight is our technology. So we created a one-stop page. So if you actually go on PC's website and you search One Stop, it is a place to streamline and highlight many of the resources that students utilize on a day-to-day basis. This process was built using analytics from where students go to often and regarding sites and different offices. So we'll continue to work on this, but this is something that I feel will help students as they begin to navigate some of these virtual experiences they have on campus. Also, I recommend that students start to pay attention to their email. I know they're very good at responding to us, that they tend to be very proactive, as I mentioned before, reaching out to us. but we will be sharing the most up-to-date information through email. So there is morning mail, which highlights all of the different activities on campus, esports. I saw virtual yoga, all of these different things to help students get engaged and feel part of the campus community. But also they'll receive messages from our provost regarding academic issues, the dean of students regarding any updates in our COVID response. So students should be checking their email at least once a day, just to make sure that they stay abreast of the different factors that are going to impact their academic semester and their success here at Providence College. But I too am proud of how we've adapted and really exhibited flexibility in these uncertain times. So lastly, very briefly, I'd just like to ask both of my esteemed colleagues, what's one recommendation you'd have for students moving forward? Dr. Ingram, I'll start with you.
I don't know about the one, but because I have a few words to say, but I said before, these are the days and times like no other on this earth, and transitions are going to happen no matter what. And I know our students are tired of computers and Zoom, but right now they are a connection to our students to get involved with each other, learn about PC, and the campus will reopen fuller. And if and when you share your concerns or problems with your family, don't expect family to solve them. They're your listening ear and your sounding board, but the big question is, what are you, the student, going to do about it? We want you to become increasingly self-sufficient, and that takes time. We want you to no longer identify solely as a member of your family or a team or a class, but in addition, we want you to more fully refine your own attitudes and beliefs and values. Stress is going to be a part of your life no matter if it's pandemic or not, but it doesn't have to get you down. So to avoid becoming overwhelmed, please connect with family, please connect with resources on campus, the academic side of things in reference to professors, OAS, etc. Create positive routines and feel connected, and you will become an old alum like me. Go Friars.
Thank you, Dr. Ingram. Dr. Red?
Thank you, Peter. I would say definitely utilize the resources that are available to you. Ask questions. No question is too small or too stupid to ask. Ask questions. If we don't know the answers, if the person you ask don't know the answer, they will find the answer for you, or they will connect you with the person who knows the answer. The other piece that I would say is that you are your biggest advocate, not your parents, not your friends, not your teammates. You're the one that's in the trenches doing the work. You're the one that's earning the degree. So therefore, you're the one that should be advocating for yourself. It's all well and good when we hear from parents, but you're the one that's in the classroom. You're the ones that see the faculty. You're the one that meets with us. And we would rather hear from you as opposed to hearing secondhand from your parents what it is that you're experiencing. We don't bite. We're here for you. We love what we do. We love working with students. So definitely feel free to reach out to us and advocate for yourself. You don't take away anything that I've said today. Take this away. Advocate for yourself. You are your biggest advocate, and utilize the resources that we have available for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Ray. The last bit of advice that I would give, and this sounds very simplistic, is to breathe. We've all talked about how much stress this current situation is really hoisting on all of us, but you're not alone. As Dr. Ingram said, you're part of a bigger group now. You're all part of the Friar family. So we all want to help. You can tell that we're very passionate about what we do, and we want to be an active agent of your success. But we know that sometimes you just need to pause and take a moment, and then obviously start working forward. But it's okay to just stop and reflect and catch your breath, and then know that you have support and people that want to help you be successful. And all you got to do is start asking questions. So we know that many of you are kind of Zoom fatigued through all the Zoom meetings. So we thank you very much for spending this time and listening to us today. We hope that you can take away some tips and recommendations on how to be successful in your first semester and beyond. And when in doubt, reach out. We're happy to help you, and go Friars.
Mm-hmm.